The reception hall was freezing, but my face felt hot. My sister, Clara, was laughing, her white veil trailing over the floorboards of the lodge she'd promised we'd share. I stood by the coat rack, holding my suitcase. My mother leaned in, smelling of expensive gin and lily of the valley. "Don't make a scene, Sarah. Mr. Henderson needed the space. He's an investor. You're just, you." No one at the table looked up. They just kept eating their salmon. I didn't say a word. I just turned around and walked back out into the rain. The rain was the kind that soaked through your skin and settled in your joints. I stood on the porch of the lodge for a full minute, watching the blurred yellow lights of the party through the condensation on the windows. I could hear the muffled bass of a love song. It felt like watching a movie of a life I wasn't allowed to star in. I walked to my car, my heels sinking into the mud. I didn't go back in to say goodbye. I didn't want to see the pity or, worse, the total indifference on their faces. I found a hostel 3 miles down the road. It smelled of damp carpet and industrial lavender. My room was a 6x6 box with a twin bed that creaked if I breathed too hard. I sat on the edge of the mattress, still in my bridesmaid dress, and opened my phone. The family group chat was exploding with photos of the first look. In every shot, there was a gap where I was supposed to be. My mother had already posted a photo of Clara and the groom with Mr. Henderson. The caption read, "The people who truly matter make the day perfect." I didn't reply. I didn't leave the group. I just watched. The next morning, the betrayal took on a sharper edge. I had been the one who handled the logistics for this wedding. I spent 6 months negotiating with the caterers because Clara's credit was shot. I had put down the $4,000 deposit for the lodge using my savings, under the verbal agreement that I'd be reimbursed once the wedding gifts came in. I met my mother for a mandatory breakfast at a diner before the morning after brunch. She was wearing her sunglasses indoors. She didn't ask where I had slept. She didn't ask if I was okay. "We need you to handle the final payout for the staff, Sarah," she said, sliding a folder across the sticky table. "Clara and Mark are heading to the airport for the Maldives. There was a little overage on the open bar, but since you saved so much on the room, we figured you wouldn't mind covering the difference." I looked at the folder. It was $3,000 in overages. "I slept in a hostel, Mom," I said. My voice was steady. Too steady. "Oh, don't be dramatic," she sighed, waving a hand. "It was one night. Mr. Henderson is going to help Mark land that dealership contract. It's an investment in your brother-in-law's future. Family helps family, right?" I realized then that family was a one-way street in our house. It was a word they used to describe my obligations, never their own. I looked at her, the way she meticulously buttered her toast, the way she refused to meet my eyes. She knew. She just didn't care because my discomfort was a small price to pay for her social standing. "Right," I said. I took the folder. I didn't pay the bill. I went to the manager's office, handed them the folder, and gave them my mother's credit card number, the one I still had on file from when I helped her set up her online banking. I told them the party was over and walked out. I drove home, packed a single trunk, and told my landlord I was moving. I didn't leave a forwarding address. I just stopped being the person who answered the phone. The silence that followed wasn't a wall, it was a slow-growing distance. I moved to a city 2 states away, a place where the air felt different and nobody knew my sister's name. I changed my number and set my social media to private, but I didn't block them. I wanted to see the pattern continue from the outside. It's easier to see the rot when you aren't living in the house. For years, I had been the family's invisible glue. When Clara crashed her car in college, I was the one who drove her to class for a semester while she complained about the upholstery in my old Ford. When my mother had her scare with her blood pressure, I was the one who spent my weekends meal prepping for her, while Clara sent flowers paid for with Mom's own credit card. I was the one they called when a pipe burst or a password was forgotten. I was the reliable one, which in our family meant I was the one whose feelings didn't need to be considered. I watched the fallout through my sister's public Instagram. For the first 3 months, the posts were triumphant. They were in the Maldives. They were buying a new SUV. They were living their best lives. But by month 6, the tone shifted. The posts became less frequent. I saw a photo of my mother's birthday dinner. They were at a cheap chain restaurant, not the bistro they usually frequented. My mother looked tired. Her hair wasn't done. Without me there to manage the small things, the big things were falling apart. I knew exactly what was happening. My mother couldn't navigate her own insurance renewals. Clara and Mark didn't know how to balance a checkbook without someone reminding them when the mortgage was due. They had spent my $4,000 lodge deposit on their honeymoon, assuming I'd just absorbed the loss like I always did. They had counted on my silence to fund their illusions. I spent those 16 months building something that was entirely mine. I worked a corporate job that valued my logistics brain. I saved. I bought furniture that didn't have anyone else's history on it. Every time I felt the urge to call, I remembered the smell of that hostel and the way my mother had buttered her toast while telling me I didn't matter. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just finished. The breaking point didn't happen in a hallway or over a screaming phone call. It happened through a formal legal notice sent to my old email address, which I checked once a month. My mother was being sued by the lodge. Apparently, when I used her card to pay the overages, she had filed a fraud claim with her bank instead of just paying the bill. She thought she could outsmart the system. But the lodge had security footage of me, the authorized wedding planner, handing over the folder. They also had the contract I'd signed. She sent me a flurry of emails. The tone shifted from, "Where are you?" to, "How could you do this to us?" in a matter of hours. She claimed I had ruined Clara's credit by proxy and that the stress was making her sick. She demanded I come home and fix the misunderstanding by telling the bank I had stolen the card. She wanted me to take a criminal charge to save her from a civil one. I sat in my new office, looking at the city skyline. I realized that to them, my entire existence was just a utility. I wasn't a daughter or a sister, I was a shield they held up whenever life fired a shot at them. I didn't reply to her emails. Instead, I forwarded the entire thread, including her demand that I lie to the bank, to the lodge's legal department and the fraud investigator at her bank. I didn't add a commentary. I didn't vent. I just provided the evidence. I was done being the shield. I decided to let the arrows land exactly where they were aimed. I blocked their emails and went back to work. The misunderstanding was finally over. I returned to my hometown 16 months to the day after the wedding. I didn't come back for a holiday or a reconciliation. I came back to the county courthouse to finalize the partition of the small plot of land my grandfather had left to me and Clara. I didn't need the money from the sale, but I needed the legal tie severed. I needed my name off every document that linked my credit, my reputation, or my future to theirs. As I walked out of the heavy oak doors of the courthouse, the humidity of the valley hit me. It felt like the air was trying to pull me back into the old drama. I saw my mother standing by a silver sedan in the parking lot. It wasn't the luxury SUV she used to prize, it was a 10-year-old model with a dent in the passenger door. She was clutching a plastic pharmacy bag and looking at the ground. When she looked up and saw me, she didn't run over. She didn't cry. She just stood there, looking at me like I was a stranger who happened to have a familiar face. "You really did it," she whispered when I got close enough. Her voice lacked its usual sharp authority. It sounded brittle, like dried leaves. "The bank dropped the fraud claim after your emails, but they closed my accounts. They blacklisted me. I can't even get a store credit card, Sarah." I stood 3 feet away from her. I noticed the way her coat was frayed at the cuffs and how she'd missed a spot of foundation near her jawline. The woman who used to obsess over optics was coming apart at the seams. "Clara and Mark had to move into my spare room," she continued, her words tumbling out now. Mark lost the dealership contract because Henderson didn't want to be associated with a family in a legal battle with a local business. He called us unstable. Clara blames me. I blame Mark. We're all sitting in that house just staring at each other. We lost the image, Sarah. We lost everything. I looked at her, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel the urge to fix it. I didn't feel the familiar itch in my chest to apologize for things I hadn't done. I saw a woman who had gambled her daughter's loyalty for a seat at a table with an investor, and she had lost both. I didn't do anything, Mom, I said. My voice was quiet, barely louder than the breeze. I just stopped doing everything. There's a massive difference between sabotaging someone and simply refusing to carry them anymore. She looked away, her eyes darting to the courthouse steps. We were family. You were supposed to be the reliable one. You were the one who understood how the world works. I did understand, I replied. I understood that if I stayed, I would eventually be the one paying for the house you're all rotting in now. I chose a different world. She didn't have a response. There was no script for this. In her mind, the story always ended with me coming around, paying the bill, and laughing off the humiliation over a glass of wine. When the credits didn't roll that way, she had nothing left to say. I walked to my car, a reliable, modest vehicle that was registered to an address she didn't know. As I drove out of town, I passed the lodge. The "For Sale" sign in the front yard was leaning at a sharp angle, half covered by overgrown weeds. The yellow lights that had seemed so warm on Clara's wedding night were gone, replaced by the blank stare of empty windows. I'm back in my city now. My apartment is quiet, filled only with the sounds of the neighborhood and the hum of my own thoughts. I have a small garden on my balcony. I spent all morning pruning the dead leaves from the lavender. It thrives because I'm the only one who tends to it, and I don't ask it to be anything other than what it is. I don't check the group chat anymore. I deleted the app months ago. Sometimes I wonder if they're still sitting in that kitchen, waiting for a phone call that will never come. But the thought doesn't keep me awake. I finally understand that family isn't a debt you spend your life paying off. It's supposed to be a sanctuary. If it's not that, it's just a cage with better wallpaper. I'm moving forward now, traveling light, and for the first time in 30 years, I can finally breathe. I used to think my mother's silence was a punishment. Now, I realize it was a gift. It gave me the quiet I needed to finally hear my own voice. I'm not the reliable one anymore. I'm just me. And for the first time, that is more than enough.